Oh, Russian women. Oh man, they're perfect, right? They're beautiful, they're feminine, they're very domestic, they're very traditional, they love their husbands, they walk on water. I've been in Russia for quite a while now, and I reckon I got a pretty good handle on the culture here. So I want to do a bit of fact checking on these Russian female stereotypes. I am about to share with you the 3 biggest myths about Russian women. The first one, myth number 1, she'll take my money when I'm in need. Yeah, she's a trifling friend indeed. She's a gold digger. All right, so this is the biggest stereotype of Russian women. They are all gold diggers. And what is a gold digger anyway? Well, a gold digger is a woman who's only interested in men for money. They don't care about the man. They don't love the man. All they want is the resources so they can soothe those terrible childhood wounds that drive her to want Gucci bags and lots of photos in Dubai. Let me run my fact checker. It is false. I would say about maybe 3% of Russian girls are gold diggers, which if your maths is really good, it means 97% of Russian women are not gold diggers. So where did this stereotype come from? Well, I've got a few ideas on this. One is that if you've met Russians outside of Russia, which is quite probable, they tend to fall into 2 archetypes. One is they're super hypergamous, man. They want money. They just want money. They go to a capital city somewhere and they try and hustle. They want a rich guy, they want coin, they really dress themselves up. They're kind of like super thoughts. So yes, these girls are pretty gold diggy, but there are only a small number of girls that do this. Now, of course, the other archetype that you've probably bumped into are the super political types. And these ones won't be gold diggy at all. Meanwhile, here in Russia, look, in Moscow, there are definitely certain neighborhoods with very high thought ratios, and these girls can be a bit on the gold diggy side. This is true. But once you're outside of those regions, into normal Moscow, you're into normal cities like I am here in Ekaterinburg, you'll see that this gold digger stereotype just disappears. Russian women are just normal. They just want a normal guy, normal relationship, normal family. Russia is not a sex tourist destination, right? You can leave that to places like Thailand, even Colombia, but the occasional guy that tries to be a sex tourist here, this is his experience. He tries to find girls to go on dates with so he can have sex. This usually comes back to online dating. So he's swiping, and the younger, more attractive girls that he matches with will be gold diggers. And there's only probably a handful of these that are operating. However, these girls are foreigner magnets. So they match really quickly with the foreigner guy. The guy thinks, oh yeah, she's hot, cool. Hey, let's go out for dinner or something, right? She's like, yeah, cool. Let's go to this restaurant. So the guy and girl barely even talk because the guy is not interested in the girl at all. He just wants her pussy. And the girl is also not interested in the guy at all. She just wants his money. So they meet up. He's like, all she wanted was the steak on the menu and expensive dessert and 3 cocktails. And he's like, I wanted to have sex and she didn't have sex with me. So the guy will repeat this process several times and he's like, you know what? All these Russian girls are gold diggers. But indeed, this is not true, my friend. You've just been played at your own game. And to take this thing a little bit further, yeah, sure, on a date, a man will typically pay, but the woman doesn't do silly things like suddenly order the most expensive menu item, you know, get the most expensive cocktail, the most expensive that, just because you're paying. Like, I've never seen anything like this. They'll just order the normal thing. Like, they're sensible and reasonable. Sometimes the girls even pay for themselves. I even had a situation maybe 3-4 days ago where a young, attractive woman, she paid for my coffee, right? So Russian women are just generally pretty reasonable, I have to say. That is myth number 1 dealt with. Myth number 2 is that all Russian women are beautiful. They're the most beautiful women on the planet. All right, let me fact check. Answer, no. Not even close. At best, in terms of genetics, they're just like any other European country, really. So where does this stereotype come from? Well, unlike in most European countries, and the US, Australia included, women here are not high-calorie human beings, and neither are men for that matter. So they have normal portions of food. They don't gorge out on massive pizzas and whatever it is that makes Westerners so fat. You go to a restaurant, it tells you on the menu how many grams there are in the meal, so you can work out roughly what's going to be suitable for you. Girls here are also much more likely to grow their hair, and just these 2 simple things It just helps make a woman look way more attractive. That's the reality of it. Although, of course, things are changing here. The Gen Z's coming through and they're looking more American and grungy. But on aggregate still, you would say that Russian women probably look better than most women in Western countries. But again, it's not genetics. It's purely lifestyle choices. Okay, that is myth number 2 taken care of. Myth number 3. Russian women really want foreign men because they all want to leave Russia because it's horrible here. Let me fact check that one. False. This stereotype does fit for a small proportion of girls. Again, they tend to be either super hypergamous, they want money, they're go-getters, they want to get the Gucci bags, so they leave Russia to go to a place where they think they can do better financially. That's a small percentage, man. 1%, 2% of the population, maybe not even that. And then you have the hyper-political ones. So the young people, especially in their 20s, they really absorb the Western political narrative and now they hate Russia, etc., and they want to leave. Realistically, these two groups maybe make up 1 or 2 million people, probably not even that. And there are a few people still in here in Russia that want to leave, but I would say it's only maybe, again, 1 or 2% of the population. The reality is that most Russians are pretty happy living inside Russia. Now, the number one complaint will usually be low salaries. And yes, they don't earn as much as Westerners do, this is true. But in the scheme of things, their salaries are still okay. And you can look around, most people have cars, good clothes, are eating well. They're still living a decent life. I guess the main difference would be things like upgrading electronics, as an example. Maybe their phone's a bit cheaper. They have to make it last another year or two. Maybe their car's a $20,000 car and they've got to replace it every 15 years, versus in the West where they might have like a $50,000 car that we might replace maybe every 8 years. These are the kind of differences, but everyone still has the basics here. And then there's complaints about corruption, and yeah, it is a pretty corrupt place and bureaucracy is painfully slow, but you don't have to deal with it that often. You know, most of your daily chores, daily activities, the way you live is not really related to what the government's doing. So most of the time, this is not going to affect you anyway. For the most part, Russians have a really strong sense of identity, like they're Russian. Even if they move somewhere else, they're still Russian. You know, they have this kind of pride, civilizational pride, I tend to refer to it as. About 2 months ago, I was sitting in a restaurant in Belarus, and this lady walked into the restaurant and said, "Oh, I've seen you on YouTube, blah, blah, blah." And it turns out that she has a marriage agency inside Belarus. So we started chatting, and it turns out her office was kind of nearby. So I finished my meal, I got up, I joined her and her assistant and went back to her office. And we had a bit of a discussion about her experience as a matchmaker in this kind of a role. And she said to me that probably less than 10% of Belarusian women are actually willing to relocate outside of Belarus. And I would say with some confidence that on average, Belarusian women would be more open to this than Russian women. So there's a good chance that the proportion of Russian women that are actually open to leaving Russia is like 5% or something around this kind of number. Finally, if you are a Russian or if you're a foreigner who spent quite a bit of time inside of Russia, I'd love to hear your thoughts below. I'm not saying she's a gold digger. She ain't messing with no broke nigga.